Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Toffee Blues YouTube channel, your source for all things Everton. My name is, of course, Calum, and I'm joined by Paul and Terry. And you join us for what could be one of the most depressing videos you watch all year. This is Everton's season in review 2022. It was went into the year. We were in a really bad place, and we're in the same place, if not worse. We're stocked up on ale to try and get us through it, because I think we're going to need it for some of the things we're going to go through here. And I'll give you the spoiler alert right now. By the time we get to the end of the year, it doesn't get any better, and it gets, if anything, worse. So yeah, we'll jump straight into it. We'll start at the beginning of the year. We all know what happened. 2021, Carlo Ancelotti left the club. Rafa Benitez came in. A lot of controversy surrounding that appointment. He started off relatively okay. You could say there were teams that Everton expect to beat anyway. But anyway, it all came crashing down very quickly. The club was a very toxic place. We come into January, we're down there, and defeats against Brighton and Norwich in January result in the ex-Liverpool manager losing his job, to which then was we were back to where we never wanted to be. So let's start how we mean to go on. January this year, Benitez left, and was it when Benitez left? Was it too early or too late for you, Paul? We'll start with you. Was it too early or too late by the point? He was going to go either way, but was it too early or too late for you?
It was too late in one sense because he never should have had the job in the first place. So from his first day, it was too late. But it was too late because he'd already lost us valuable points that we might not have lost if we'd have had a different person in the dugout. I'm talking the likes of Norwich away, I'm talking the likes of Watford at home, I'm talking about what was the other horrible result he had as well during that period. It was a game we got
to the derby.
No, we were always going to lose the derby, I think, considering how far ahead Liverpool were. I can't remember, but what game was that? Was that the 3-1? Was it?
I think so.
I think it was. Yeah, just games where we lost and we lost badly, where we might have squeaked the draw at least, and 1 or 2 points extra would have gone a long way 6 months later when we were all anxiety ridden. But he should never have had the job in the first place, but he did get it, and as you said, the wheels just came off very quickly because Benitez just came into Everton, proceeded to do exactly what Benitez does everywhere he goes. He wants all the credit for everything that goes well for himself. Anything that doesn't go well, he won't take any responsibility for. He starts interfering with things he's got no right to interfere in, like who the club's medical staff is, who the club's scouts are, who he should answer to immediately, because apparently he sort of made sure that Brands was sidelined as director of football, who you think should be his immediate superior. Apparently he had, Brands pushed out and he had a relationship with Machiri himself. Just Benitez throwing his ego around and his very large weight around and just proceeding to cause more fires than he puts out, if he puts any out at all. I've said before, I believe Benitez, at least in the last 15 years, has become an absolute myth of a manager. I don't know why big clubs or just clubs that take themselves seriously give him any sort of work, and I don't think any club's going to give him any serious club's going to give him work in the future. I think he's run out of he's reached the end of the line, really. The only he's bluffed his way into good jobs too often now. So I was glad to see the back of him, but that January month overall was just an absolute. It was like a month from a sitcom. We sacked him. We got rid of one of our best players, Luca Dean, and replaced them with some Ukrainian kid who no one's heard of, who isn't half as good, as much as he tries and as much as people like him. But personally, we had some guy who has done absolutely nothing as a manager in Europe for at least 10 years in Vitor Pereira, if you feel that he ever did do anything in Europe, because what did he do outside of managing FC Porto? Really, he got sacked from every other job he took after that. He went on Sky Sports News and did basically a live sales pitch to Evertonians as to why we should trust him to be our manager, and then started mentioning players who hadn't played for us for 5-6 years, like Phil Jagielka, like Baines, Tim Howard, Kevin Morales. And we rounded off the month with Frank Lampard, who wasn't really at the top of anyone's list, but to start with. But it was when it came down to a choice between him and Pereira, everyone went for Lampard. But it wasn't like the minute we sacked Benitez, everyone was like, "Go get Lampard." Not from what I remember. We ended up with a manager who was realistically about third or fourth choice, and signing players who were just absolute cast-offs from other clubs in the Premier League who came in and did little to nothing. So
this is it.
That January month was probably one of the worst months I can ever remember.
You know, we talk about January there. It was almost 12 months ago now, Terry. And, you know, we look back and for a lot of people, you thought because it was so toxic under Benitez, we thought, you know, anything could be better. But, you know, meanwhile, managerless Everton are there, you know, it wasn't quite a critical, you know, panic stations just yet. There was a fear of relegation, of course, but it wasn't to the point to which it eventually ended up last season. But, you know, it was obvious that we needed reinforcements. And meanwhile, the managerless Everton are running around trying to, you know, keep together players like Donny van der Beek, Dele Alli, El Ghazi, and, you know, Paul alluded to the whole Vitor Pereira fiasco there as well. It was just, it set the tone for 2022, really, didn't it, that month of January, Terry?
Yeah, you just saw, you've got to look behind the curtain about dysfunctional Everton are. Like, you know, they sacked Benitez far too late, but only after they've let him cause all murder and get rid of loads of people behind the scenes, get rid of, you know, key goal creating players, get rid of Luca Dean, then get rid of him a couple of days later. Then you've got the internal review starts, which is just, we've decided that we've marked our own homework, and you know, the only thing we need to do is change Marcel Brands because all of us are doing a great job. And furthermore, let's add Graham Sharp to the board because of his insight. Man who hasn't done anything outside of giving like training ground tours for decades, like
I'm working for Radio City, yeah,
embarrassing. Like and you know, saw Ken Wright and his one man and his dog Sharp walking around, and it came down to, you know, gave it to Duncan Ferguson, see if he could replicate the response he got in his previous stint as an interim manager. But then no, the one game that Steven Gerrard got the better of someone in the English football had to be against us, so we could smirk at the park end from miles away because he's dead hard. And then we obviously end up with either Vitor Pereira or Frank Lampard, and if it was faced with that crap choice, I'm pretty sure Lampard's still better than Pereira, but it was a terrible choice. And then further, you know, another we see behind the curtain again, like the scattergun transfer approach, where we sign several players, all with different people pushing for them, all in the positions that we don't need. We signed Dele Alli, we signed Donny van der Beek, we signed Anwar El Ghazi, who barely kicks a ball. Donny van der Beek has one good game before he's out the team, and then you never see him again. Dele Alli's turns up for an holiday, doesn't care, he's not willing to track back. Meanwhile, we're shipping goals and need defenders and need, you know, more solidity and more you know, strength in the spine of the team, the core, which we ended up, you know, realising at the end of the season once we'd scraped through. But yeah, just Everton in a nutshell was that January. Sacking managers after letting them cause murder and sacking them too late. Signing players with different people sticking their oar in and having a different agendas. Because obviously one's Mashiri, one's Ken Wright, one's someone else. Even Patterson and Michaelenko, who were signed, they were both Marcel Brands targets from the previous summer. So of the 5 players brought in, there was 3 or 4 different people who were pushing for it. So yeah, starters we need to go on.
It was just a mess, you know, as Terry, you rightly said there. It was an absolute mess. And
to top it off, as Terry touched on, another free job handed out to someone's mate.
Exactly, there you go. And you know, it was just an absolute calamity. And it's, as I say, it set the tone for what would follow. Just before we leave the month of January, of course, what Everton did try to do, they gave the Aston Villa fixtures we briefly touched on then to Duncan Ferguson in the hope that he could maybe galvanise the team, which we saw, you know, a couple of years before, prior to Ancelotti's appointment, in what was a great afternoon over Chelsea. And Paul, it just didn't work, did it, at all? I think, if I'm right in saying, I think it was an early kickoff. I think it was an 12:30 kickoff that day against Villa, and it just didn't work, did it? It just didn't work. And whatever sort of reaction they hoped to get from Ferguson taking charge again, it just didn't come off for them, did it?
No, it was just that game. Ferguson's one against Aston Villa. It was just a bit of a damp squib, non-event really. I remember they won 1-0 from a corner, which was a bit controversial. I think we had been fouled in the lead up to it, and it didn't get mentioned at all because some Aston Villa player fell down because someone I wouldn't even say threw a plastic bottle at him. Someone just tossed a plastic bottle onto the pitch, and he went down like he'd been hit over the head with a hammer. Can't remember who it was. So the fact that that goal shouldn't have even stood, never ever got any sort of mention afterwards. But Everton didn't look like winning that game, and I wouldn't even use that as a stick to beat Duncan Ferguson with, because Ferguson hasn't managed properly in the game. He's finally left the club, looking to do that now. We'll see if he rocks up anywhere and if he does how he does. But Ferguson was never going to be the long-term answer to Everton's problems, because even if you do believe that he's got the makings of a great manager, there's a lot of people out there who could be great managers or are great managers who could come into Everton and not be able to solve a thing, because the problems are so serious and so deep-rooted and so complex. Do you know what I mean? We can't just expect an ex-player, no matter how on the ball he might be or how popular he is with supporters, to come in and solve 30 years worth of problems, really, which is why Everton are in the state they're in. So I kind of felt sorry for Ferguson in that game, because people wanted to try and use that loss to Aston Villa to portray him the same way they portray Unsworth, like, oh, what a hype job he was. He had his chance at the job properly and he blew it. Shows he's no good. I wouldn't necessarily agree with that. I wouldn't say that he necessarily is going to be a good manager, or he will be. I think you have to see how he gets on if he ends up getting a job anywhere, because apparently he's looking for one now. But I don't really blame that defeat to Steven Gerrard's Aston Villa on Duncan Ferguson. I just blame it on a bit of bad luck with the goal, and again, just the people who assembled the squad leaving us with absolute dross, because the application was there, but there was just absolutely no quality.
So obviously they're going into February. It was then confirmed that Frank Lampard was going to be the man to take charge of the club. Fantastic player in his day. We all know what he did as a player. Obviously, going into the Everton job, his previous credentials with Derby County obviously led them to the playoff final. He had a spell at Chelsea where, it was lauded for getting them to the Champions League under a transfer ban. Of course, they were very quick to get rid of him the season after. So Lampard was the man in the end. It was in amongst shouts for Roberto Martinez coming back. There was shouts for Wayne Rooney to come back in a managerial capacity. Duncan Ferguson never really cemented his name as a top candidate, really. And of course, Vitor Pereira, who looked for a short while to be the man. It was almost like the owner just completely just seen his ass. And I believe he was going to appoint him, but in true leadership fashion, completely folded and then gave in. But that's just a joke in itself. So Lampard's appointed, whilst we've just confirmed signings of Dele Alli and Donny van de Beek. And he goes into his first game in an FA Cup tie against Brentford in the 4th round. I think we'd beaten Hull City. We just about scraped past Hull. Lampard's first game. Terry, what are your memories from Lampard's first game, and what were your sort of memories of going into the appointment as a whole? Because we weren't in a great position. It was a bit of a sign that not a lot of people saw coming, I suppose. But in the end, it was confirmed to be the man. So what are your sort of memories of that period of time? When he got his first win over Brentford. You've got to be careful with those first games, haven't you? You can't really read too much into them. It was a bit of an occasion, but what were your thoughts when he was sort of announced as the manager?
Honestly, I thought he's the only real option we've got at the time. I actually didn't think Vitor Pereira was realistic, because I just felt he was a stalking horse, like to make to try and get Lampard's demands down or whatever. I never thought he was realistic. I thought the Roberto Martinez idea was a realistic thing, and that would give me nightmares. But Lampard, I just thought, what? I thought he's a short-term manager. He's not going to be the Everton manager for a long spell, Frank Lampard. It just doesn't even fit right in my mind, even though I thought, I'll come to what I thought positive in a minute. I thought that's not going to last. We'll be getting rid of him in a year and we'll get our proper next new manager after that, which might end up happening. I thought, I've heard him talk as a pundit. He's very naive. He thinks he can come in here and start playing, progressive football, and he'll soon learn that, this isn't not going to work with these players. And obviously that lesson was taught to him in the coming months. But I did think, and this is how naive I was, I did think, and it didn't end up happening, that, his personality and his status should see us through some sticky situations, because we might start getting a better shake from referees now, because it's Lampard. And obviously that didn't happen. The Everton factor outweighed Lampard's, status. But I thought, the same way, the big ex, Sky Sports Club players, they get a bit more leeway with referees, and I thought the media pressure will come off us because we've got Frank Lampard. None of those things happen. So even the small pods. Oh, and one more thing, I thought we'll actually be able to have access to his little black book of players. We might get some good Chelsea players, on loan or on sweetheart deals. And none of those things have happened even now down the line. We haven't signed any Chelsea players or got any deals like that. And we haven't had any luck with referees on the back of him or any luck with the media. So the upsides that I thought came with him haven't come, and the downsides have come. I don't think this is his third job, and he hasn't been good anywhere now, and I don't think he's a good enough manager for this level. So I think Everton should replace him sooner, but I've not made this decision on a snap judgment. I've never really thought it was a good fit with Lampard. I've never seen him as the Everton manager in the long term.
Yeah, I just want to pick up on a point you made there, Terry. Obviously, this last year for Everton, it's been very... I think it's fair to say, despite our struggles on the pitch, it's also been marred by a lot of contentious decisions with VAR. Just at the top of my head, we've had horrific sendings off for players. We've had atrocious decisions with penalties that we should have had. You think back to the handball against Manchester City. You think, the shout for the penalty on Anthony Gordon at Anfield. It just seems to have been, we had 2 goals ruled off against Arsenal, VAR. Paul, what have you made of the whole, listen, everyone gets shafted by VAR. We know this, but...
Not everyone.
Terry's basically explained my feelings for me. I haven't got the energy. We know why we're not getting decisions go for us, because we're not a Sky club. We're not a media darling. We probably won't ever. We never have been. We probably never will be. That's why. That's why we don't get anything. There's a lot of people in the upper echelons of football who would be very happy if Everton got relegated and went away forever. Yeah. Call me a conspiracy theorist all you want. The evidence is there in black and white in front of you. There's a lot of people who don't want Everton to stay in the Premier League. They'd be happy if Everton went away. I don't know what their reasons are for that. It's probably a lot of different reasons, but we're just a club who are not seen as vital to the Premier League, the brand, whereas certain other clubs are. So I don't expect anything. So, and I'm not the least bit surprised we get shafted as often as we do. It's frustrating as it is. So I don't even want to give these people their energy. I think they're corrupt as hell, and maybe something will come out in the future that basically pulls the curtain back. But like when that sort of happens in sport, when scandals get uncovered years after the fact, it's usually when no one cares and nothing can be done about it. And if it ever comes out, that'll be how it comes out, when it's too late for Everton to be compensated.
So yeah, it was an absolute terrible season for refereeing decisions. It just seemed to get worse and worse. Just when we thought we'd seen the worst of it, something else would happen, which would be just as bad. But the season went on. We were on the back of some really heavy defeats. You think to the likes of Tottenham 5-0, a really bad one. And for a while, it really looked like Everton were really heading for the drop. We had I don't even know if this is being too generous. We had a little mini run in the FA Cup, so you should say, but we played Hull City, Boreham Wood, and Brentford, and then the minute we played Crystal Palace away, a game away from Wembley, that got taken from us.
Wasn't 3 of Lampard's first 5 wins in the FA Cup? I know he's not managed many wins. I think he managed 8, 9, or 10 overall. I think. I don't know how many he's got in the league, but I know a good chunk of his wins have been in cup competitions. And I don't care about cup competitions. Well, that's wrong. I'll say I do care about cup competitions, but they are not our priority. Cup competitions. When you're in the state that we're in, it doesn't matter if we get through the 3rd or 4th round. We're going to get beaten well by the first half-decent outfit we face. And in some cases, like this season, we don't even have to play a decent outfit like Bournemouth. We can just play a load of reserves and get hammered anyway. So cup victories meant very, very little for me. I didn't even go to that Brentford game or watch it. I remember I was in Costco walking around back. I think it finished 4-1, did it?
Yeah.
Lampard's first game, I was walking around in Costco, not even following the score. I only found out the score when I got back home.
Yeah, well,
I haven't put any stock. I'll sum it up. I haven't put any stock in any win we've had in a cup under Lampard, because at the moment, the cup should be the last thing on this club's mind.
So yeah, when we go back before the season just went on, and we want to come to you, Terry, and want to ask you about how you know, it got to a point where it got really bad, didn't it? You know, we think back to that night at Turf Moor, which I was at that game myself, and I genuinely believed we would be relegated that night. But you know, one of the few positives, I suppose, and you know, it's difficult to talk about it right now, looking back, because of the situation we find ourselves in this year. You know, some of the shine's maybe been taken off it. I don't know. I can't really describe it, but I hope you know what I sort of mean. But I'm on about the coach greets and the togetherness of the fans and how the fans pulled the team through. What did you make of all that? You know, was that the sole reason we ended up staying up? The unity, the fans, you know, because it could have gone one way or the other after that Burnley game and you know, fixtures like that. The fans came together with coach greets. We saw the smoke bombs, we saw the flares. You know, we saw the spirit of the Blues, if you want to call it that. But as I say, it's difficult to talk about it now because I just know we're worse off. But it's so frustrating. But for just solely in isolation, how much of a role did that play in ensuring we stayed up, Terry?
There's only two reasons. 50% of it was that, and the other 50% was luck. Because we beat Man United when they were having the worst game I've ever seen Man United play. We overwhelmed Chelsea with emotion. And then after that, it was just, you know, games not going in our favour from other teams who were like slipping up. So these players still didn't, you know, they didn't react to these crowd scenes, to these coach welcomes, because they didn't play any better, not really. Maybe a little bit in the odd occasion, but they were still mostly crap. They were just, you know, we intimidated opposition teams at Goodison with the crowds. We didn't G up our own team as much as, you know, we make out. So the crowd's the only reason, and I'll just, if we end up next, you know, this season having to do it again, I don't think it'll work as well the next time. But honest to God, the fans bailed the team. Well, they didn't even bail the team out. They bailed the ownership out. The top brass of the club who allowed this to happen and are the cause of this, who then turned around and said that they're doing a good job and didn't sack anyone after marking their own homework. We've bailed out the owners of this club so many times, and we might need to do it again this season. But yeah, I think the fan coach welcomes and all that, I think it was massive, but not for the reason people think. I don't think it helped our team, because I don't think our team were capable of being helped, apart from the odd game, which, you know, we'll come on to later. I think it just intimidated opposition teams rather.
Well, by hook or by crook, we ended up staying up. It took the penultimate game of the season against Crystal Palace, in a game which did see, you know, I think this supports your point, Terry. You know, it was a game that did see coach greetings, but after 45 minutes, we found ourselves 2-0 down. So, you know, on that point, I think you're spot on. But, you know, in a mad 45 minutes, we pulled it back. You know, a goal from Michael Keane, Richarlison with an equaliser, and then a diving header from Dominic Calvert-Lewin ensured our survival. And we saw the pitch invasions, and it was great scenes. And then, but I think it was just the outpour of emotion and relief at the time. I think everyone could really see it coming. But the one line that really came out of it, which recording it now, it's so difficult, but how this can't be happened again, and all the spiel had come out about we can't be left in this position again. And, you know, without going too much off topic, because we're talking about the year as a whole and where we are now, but it's difficult, isn't it, Paul? You know, how we were left to be in that position anyway, and looking at where we are now, it's really sad to look back and see that not much has changed. If not, it's got worse.
Yeah, I mean, I don't take any like pride or happiness from that final day against Crystal Palace. I'm not one of these who said, "Oh, you shouldn't have ran on the pitch." Fans lost. The shared relief caused fans to react the way they did. But I don't get why everyone repeats it and puts clips of it on the timeline. That should be something that should be buried forever and forgotten about and never ever mentioned. The fact that we were in such a diabolical state and it took that sort of divine intervention for us to stay up. It shouldn't be something that fans celebrate and say, "Oh yeah, remember what a great night that is." No, it'd be a great night if you were Burnley, and staying in the Premier League is all you'd ever want to achieve. So and who was it who said that quote? We can't ever be in this position again. Is it who I think it was? Billy Liar.
It was him, or it was Baxendale, I think.
Yeah, so basically two people who are massively responsible for us even being in this state are the same people. We're making quotes up like that. Do you know what I mean? I don't want to lose me, right? But this club will just keep going down in circles. We'll keep circling the drain until certain people upstairs have gone. Because all they've done is cause Everton to decline. There's been nothing but a disease at Everton since the time they arrived, whether they arrived 5 or 6 years ago or they arrived 25, 30 years ago. They've done nothing to make Everton a better football club. All they've ever contributed is to Everton's decline. And we're going to get worse and worse and worse. And it looks like we had any chance we had of getting rid of them a couple of years ago. Might have, if we'd have got rid of them a couple of years ago, if the fans would have sort of come together and managed to make something happen, then it might have stopped us from being in the position we're in, and we could be looking at a very different Everton Football Club. But the fact of the matter is we haven't. So even if fans rally now and get them out in the next year or two, it's almost certainly too late now, because the damage is done, and there's just that feeling of resignation that anything that we do now, it's not going to be enough to save us. Because you said, it's kind of been ruined a bit, all those, the fans coming together last season. There's just for me, it's a feeling of all that last season just counted for nothing now. Because what was the point when we were just going to be back in the exact same position a year later? We can't be doing that over and over and over again. And even if the fans do, come together like we did last season, as Terry said, it's not going to be enough this time. So teams that we managed to intimidate last season are not going to be intimidated by us again, because they've improved and they've got more experience and more seasons, and we haven't got any better. So all that coming together last season, greeting the coaches, the flares, the Spirit of the Blues song catching on major, even if that the fans kind of put their heads together and sort of make that sort of campaign and atmosphere at Goodison again going into crucial games, it's probably not going to be enough. And if Everton goes down, it will not be the fan. It will be not the majority of fans will have no blame in it. There's one or two who have indulged these people on the board and have refused to get off their arse and do anything about it. And when I say do something about it, I mean letting the people who are trying to push through change get on with it, because there's a lot of fans who are outright hostile to these fans, who want to point out facts about the fact that the club's been asset stripped, pointing out facts that there's people at the club who've gone on the record and told us barefaced lies. Or when they try and do something like a walkout, or they try and educate people on social media, or they want to have just debates in the pub or something, they just get attacked and hounded by these idiots who don't know what they're talking about. So if Everton go down, then there's certain Evertonians who will absolutely deserve it. That will be the club that they have wished for themselves. But there'll be other Evertonians like myself and like Terry, and I assume yourself, who will be absolutely devastated. And all we can do is say we told you so.
Yeah. Either way, I very much know what you mean. It feels very much like last season and this season that they're almost like two cheeks of the same arse in a way, aren't they? They're just not much has changed at all. So we ended up staying up last season. The club then went off on a tour of America. It was Lampard's first full transfer window. People tried to be optimistic with the signings of we brought in the likes of Connor Cody on loan from Wolves, Amadou Onana from Lille. We started to see Nathan Patson start getting some more game time. Obviously the big one was Richarlison leaving the club. Terry, we suppose we all saw it coming. Richarlison was leaving. He ended up going to Tottenham Hotspur for the best part of 50, 60 million or something like that. We all knew Richarlison was going to leave. Fans' favourites. Came up with some really important goals for us. You look back at his time at Everton, scored 53 goals for us. He was a good player. Let's have it right. He was a good player for us, and he dragged us through a lot of those tough times last season, I think it's fair to say. So it was inevitable that we were going to lose him. But at the end of the day, we go back to that common trend. It's just another name to add to the list of players who we just couldn't match their ambition, and they ended up leaving. And there could be another one soon, and the goalkeeper, if reports seem to be believed. But anyway, Richarlison leaving, it was always coming, Terry, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, what won't be remembered as well, it was at the time, but like our history will forget that he was sold when he was sold to keep the wolves from the door, because we had the Premier League had us on the naughty step, and we needed to bring money in before the turn of the new financial year, for the 1st of July. So we were hamstrung, and we sold him, and we had to sell him at that time, because we've been so badly run by the second best paid board in the league, by the way, that we literally were going to fall foul of financial fair play regulations if we didn't sell him inside that time frame. And Leeds and Burnley were also threatening to file to make legal cases against us in the Premier League for the way they'd let us away with it. So again, we keep going back to this board, but they're just stellar, aren't they? They're like the new ones and the old ones on the board. But yeah, Richarlison, talismanic player, promised us we wouldn't go down and did everything in his power to not let us go down. And I think he could have got better than Spurs. Spurs are a good club. I don't dislike Spurs, but I think Richarlison could have ended up at like a Barca or someone like that, because Barca aren't as good as they used to be. And I think that's the type of place he could have went, because you've seen him now with Brazil and the way he plays when he's away from Everton. He's a very good player. The only ones who don't think he's any good are I'm sorry, the cop-ites in the media who just don't like him because he was an Everton player who play acted on the floor and rolled around, which obviously none of their players have ever done. But
he was an Everton player who's good, so they were never going to like him.
They didn't like him because he got fouled and like he wouldn't get up straight away and he'd roll around and he'd exaggerate and what have you. Okay, a lot of players do that, but because it's at Everton, they're like, oh, he's crap as well. He's crap. Well, suddenly now he's not at Everton and no one's saying he's crap anymore. It's like funny that, isn't it? He's suddenly, oh, how good's Richarlison, as if he's playing any differently than he was for Everton. But yeah, talismanic player. Wish him all the best. Seems like a great fella as well as a top player. And we're pouring off for having him. But one thing that I want history to recall is we had to sell him because we had the Wolves at the door.
Okay, so yeah, and then obviously we find ourselves up to speed now. A tour of America, some new signings at the back. A lot was made of the defensive reinforcements, especially, Tarkowski and Cody coming in. Nathan Patson started to get some more game time. Idrissa Gana Gueye coming back. Amadou Onana, a front three, which I think the bottom line has so far been very blunt. But we started the season, we didn't pull up any trees really. Defeat to Chelsea, defeat to Aston Villa, just about scraped the point against Nottingham Forest. Still at the time of the recording, their only away goal they've scored all season, and that was in the middle of August. But yeah, just before we start to round things up, because we're sort of getting up to present day now, at the time of recording, we're currently on the cusp of 2023. Everton, as of right now, have only won 3 league games this season, the last of which came in October against Crystal Palace. It's not looking good. It's not looking good. We mentioned before how, it very much feels like the 2 seasons have bled into one. At the start of this video, we talked about how things haven't really got much better since Rafa Benitez departed the club. So just so we start to round things up, I'll come to you both. Terry, I'll come to you first. If you can, I know it's a very big question to ask. I know we've been at this for some time now, but where are we up to? Where are we up to, mate? This season, it's been very underwhelming. I think there's an argument there that it's probably worse than last season as of right now. We've not long come off the back of the World Cup break. It wasn't very good going into it. We've had a lot of time off. We've come away and we look worse. Let's have it right. We look worse. So, Terry, going into 2023, it's been a year to forget for Everton, but where are we up to right now in your eyes?
I don't think all hope's gone. I think the core of the team is still better than last season. If you look, we were playing John Joe Kenny and proper crabs like that last season, and you think now you go Tarkowski, Cody, Patterson, Michaelenko, Onana, Idrissa Gueye. These core players, I think, can still do it. They can get they do a play. We had a run of games early in the season where we got several draws, and it was based on resilience. There was no goals in the team. That was the problem. But the resilience and the strength of character was there. And I think a better manager, I'm just going to say, I think Sean Dyche, I know he's not everyone's cup of tea, but I think Sean Dyche, with those tools, would see us comfortably safe. But at the end of the day, a new manager is a temporary fix. It's a plaster on an axe wound. We need to change at the very top of this club, otherwise we're just going to be going through the same motions every time. David Moyes shown that a good manager can, counteract a bad board for a long time. But at this point, I don't think there's any manager in the world good enough to know how bad this board has become. So, I would like to see Lampard replaced with Sean Dyche, and I think we will do it, but only after the transfer window, which is a mistake. I think we should give Dyche the transfer window, but we're not going to. But at the end of the day, after that, we need this club to be sold to people who are going to run it properly and who will get rid of this token Everton, the community boards of Ken Wright, Barrett Baxendale and Graham Sharp. And then, Mashiri, I don't know what's worse, Mashiri having his hands on the tiller, or the or Machete being absent, because I suppose being absent is slightly better because he's not foisting players like El Ghazi on us. But we're at the minute, it's a perilous predicament, and we can't be relying on the fans to get us out again. We've got an opportunity this January to make changes, to sort ourselves out, bring in players that we need, and get this squad going, because Cody, Tarkowski and Pickford just as a back, like a little triangle at the back, is better than a lot of other clubs around us have got defensively. We should be looking to build on things like that. And I just think the way this team's coached is not going to work. I don't think Lampard's their job, and he's not made an impression as a good manager at any of them. He's been in the Championship, he's been at the top of the tree with Chelsea, and he's been in middle of the road with a lower Premier League club like us. And in none of them has he looked any good. He looks like he's a good punter, but not a good manager.
Yeah, Paul, do you echo that? I mean, we're coming to the end of the year. Yeah. The year's gone very, very quickly, I think. It doesn't seem like too long ago. We were heading into January last year, asking the same sort of questions about the future of a manager, about the quality of players, about what we need to do to replace it. And we're going into another January with the same questions sort of asked. So, but we don't want to be sat here this time next year, maybe discussing how we get out the Championship. But where do you see it going at the moment, Paul? Because not much progress has been made as of this year. It's been a real year to forget.
I don't want to predict I don't want to say where I think it's going, mate, because it's not very nice, to be honest with you. I echo what Terry said. All I'll add really is 2022 for me has been, without a doubt, by a distance, the single worst year I've ever experienced as an Evertonian.
I agree.
Honestly, it's got to be the worst year we've had since the turn of the century, really. Even that year we finished fourth from bottom under Moyes. Wasn't as bad as this, even as bad as it was under Martinez. As frustrating as it got in the latter days under him, it wasn't as bad as this. This must be what it felt like for fans who were supporting us under Mike Walker in like 1994, 95, when we were bottom of the league at Christmas and Joe Royle came in and saved the day. I can only imagine that is the only sort of time period you can compare this with that was comparable to what we're going through now, where it just feels like there's no hope, and that with a doomed ship, nothing can save us, or if there is something that can save us, we're just too incompetent to go out and get it. So it's been undoubtedly the worst year I've ever known as an Everton fan, and I can only pray that 2023 isn't anywhere near as bad, because if it's anywhere close to as bad as 2022, I just don't think Everton are still going to be in the Premier League. And if Everton are not in the Premier League anymore, then I don't want to sound like a fair weather fan, but I'm already at the point where I pay Everton a lot less mind than I used to. And if they drop out the Premier League altogether, I think I might just become a part-timer. Really, that's me being honest. And when I say part-timer, I mean someone who doesn't go to games at all, someone who just maybe looks on me phone for the odd result and doesn't really get worked up or happy with a win or a loss. If we just become part of football's pyramid, like all the teams in the Football League are, and you just think, what is really the point in me following my club week to week? It doesn't really make a difference. If I'm going to watch the sport, I might as well watch the Champions League teams. I just feel like I'm heading in that direction, becoming a casual, really.
Yeah. On that note, I think we should all just leave it there. I agree with everything Terry and Paul have said. It's been a really tough, difficult year for Everton, and what makes it worse is how the signs just aren't there at this moment that things are going to get better anytime soon. And that's the most worrying thing, I think. So, yeah, absolutely. It's been a really, really tiring year for Evertonians. And, yeah, it's been tough. It's been difficult. Singularly the worst one I can remember for sure, as I'm sure a lot of people watching this. But, yeah, we shall leave it there. That was the review of 2022. We did do a disclaimer at the start of the video that this could be the most depressing video you watch all day.
Other than Everton, I hope everyone's well and everyone's having a good time.
Yes, but apart from that, all the best for the new year, everyone. Thanks for watching the channel throughout 2022, and hopefully we've got a bit more to cheer about in 2023 if we can. But that is very wishful thinking. But all the best anyway. Thanks for sticking with us and watching us this year. Be sure to subscribe, like, and comment if you haven't done so already. And we shall, next time we speak to you will probably be in the new year. So thanks everyone, and hopefully we can pray things get a bit better. Big thanks to Terry and Paul for jumping on and sitting through that with us. And we shall see you next time on the Toffee Blues. All the best, everyone.